Well, it looks like we're back in Brimstone County, Torinobu, and not a moment too soon. I fear a moment longer in that ghastly swamp, and the both of us would have been coming down with the pox.
Yes, it is good to be back in familiar surroundings, for certain. Speaking of which, do you know where we are, Bowmont-san?
I can't be too certain from inside the mine, but once we make our way out of here, I'm sure I'll get our bearings for us. Don't worry, Torinobu. I'll have us back to civilization in no time. Well, would you look at that? Looks like our good friend Swampy has already found the way out of here. Come on, let's go. I can't wait to get to the closest hotel and wash these bloody clothes and have a bath. Beaumont's Travel Journal, June 23rd to June 27th, 1876. Our travels took us through Griff's Pass. The rough trail through the mountain pass narrows up ahead. It would be an ideal place for an ambush, and we had a bad feeling about it. Just as we were about to exit out of the other side of the bottleneck, we heard rough voices, and suddenly we were surrounded by bandits. We were outnumbered and in no shape to fight, but lucky for us, the bandits made a deal with us. We gave them a few dollars, and fortunately, they didn't pry too far. After all, they were in an elevated position and didn't wish to give up their high ground, so we left the money and they allowed us to move on. Once we were safely away from Griff's Pass, we set up camp for the night. The next day it was bright and sunny. We came to the Shadow Cliff Monastery, where fortunately, the preacher gave us a meal and let us stay for the night. However, much to our dismay, he did not have any provisions that we could take on the rest of our journey with us. We're running low on food, and the next closest town is Last Chance. It really will be our last chance if we can't get there before we run out of food. Torinobu asked the preacher about the man in black, and he said he knew of this heretic, but sadly didn't know where he was. However, seeing Torinobu's conviction and his noble cause, he gave him an artifact that had been in the Shadow Cliff Monastery for a long time, a magic ring said to be filled with God's burning spirit. I must confess, despite the calming atmosphere of being in a monastery, I had nightmares that night about being stuck back in Jargono. The next day we left the Shadow Cliff Monastery and headed off towards Last Chance. During our travels, we did a spot of hunting, but the ground beneath us gave way and we fell into a hole. Fortunately, it wasn't too difficult to climb out, and all we had to show for it were a few cuts and grazes. We never did manage to hunt any game, and so that night we slept on empty stomachs. The next morning, as we continued on towards Last Chance, a great writhing mass of entangled serpents erupted right in front of us from the desert floor. Fortunately, Torinobu and I have had quite the experience with serpents over the last few days, and were able to quickly dodge aside and avoid their evil-looking bites. With that out of the way, we made it to Last Chance in the early evening. Torinobu asked around, and one of the townsfolk said they had heard about a new preacher arriving in Sarapin, preaching strange new gospels. Lucky for us, Last Chance has a train station, and tomorrow morning we'll be able to catch a train that will take us straight to Sarapin. And so Bowmont and I bought a new horse each from the livery, and tomorrow we will take the train to Sarapin and see if the rumours of the heretic preacher are true. I hope not, for we do have friends there, and if they are, well, I suppose we'll just have to save them. Beaumont and Torinobu arrive in the town of Sarapin, having finally tracked down the wicked Akumanojin, the man in black, the heretic preacher. As they enter the edge of town, they see many of the buildings set ablaze, bright orange flames flickering in the evening, and thick black clouds of smoke roiling in the sky as the smell of burning timbers assault their senses. Bloody hell, he's burning the town down.
We must save the people. They are trapped in the burning buildings.
Yes, let's get to it. There's no time to waste. As Bowmont and Torinobu prepare to brave the flames of the burning town, the heretic preacher stands in the church, preaching his wicked corruption to those foolish enough to listen to his words. Bowmont rushes forwards, entering the sheriff's office of Sarapin. The flames here are only just catching. However, the sheriff's office is empty. No doubt the sheriff and his deputies have already fled to safety. Meanwhile, Torinobu enters the town saloon. Inside, he finds two groups of townsfolk cowering from the flames that burn the baccarat tables and roulette wheels. The samurai grabs a nearby water barrel and shoves it over, managing to douse most of the flames. Thank you, sir," says one of the townsfolk, moving towards the exit to the saloon. "If you don't mind, we're gonna get the hell out of this place."
Yes, go, quickly, leave this town, it is not safe.
At the far end of the town, the heretic preacher spews his corrupting words.
"And behold, the God King shall arise from beneath the sands to eat the sins and flesh of all mankind. In his belly we shall be reborn as angels eternal. All hail Shudamel."
The townsfolk listening to him are enraptured by his evil, and learning that the buildings are being extinguished and the people being saved, they draw their pistols and run outside, hoping to gun down whoever is trying to stop the Man in Black's good work. As a handful of the townsfolk leave the church to attack Beaumont and Torinobu, others rise up from the pews, donning black cloaks and declaring themselves loyal to the Crimson Hand, and by extension the heretic preacher, as their messiah. In the sheriff's office, the flames begin to spread. Despite Beaumont's effort, the fire still rages. Beaumont knows he needs to get this fire put out. Without the sheriff's office, this town is doomed. Whether the heretic preacher is here or not, he cannot let Sarapin fall into lawlessness. He pulls out one of Saxton's potions and drinks it, immediately feeling his muscles and ligaments limber up. He grabs the burning furniture and hurls it out the windows into the street. Then, using heavy blankets, he manages to smother the last of the flames and save the sheriff's office. He turns to Torinobu across the street. "Well, that's the sheriff's office saved. We've got to get to the others, though."
Hey, we must continue forward and save as many people as possible on our way to Akumanojin.
Torinobu leaves the saloon and rushes down the street. Seeing the corrupted bandits up ahead, he prepares himself for a fight. Swampy barks angrily, smelling the corruption on these former townsfolk, now twisted and evil. All the while, the screams of the innocent townsfolk can be heard from inside burning buildings. The three corrupted townsfolk run down the street and open fire on Torinobu, but the samurai's skill allows him to deftly dodge aside and avoid their shots. Swampy barks angrily, enraged at these corrupted folk thinking they can attack his master. The hound rushes forward and jumps at one of the bandits, chomping on his leg. Then, from the church spill forth the Crimson Hand devotees, rushing forward to do Akumanojin's dirty work. They each carry a rifle and level them in Torinobu's direction. But to the samurai's horror, they do not fire at him. They each instead train their rifles on Swampy and open fire on the hound. Their accuracy, however, is terrible, and only a single bullet grazes the dog's flank, but it's enough to make Swampy howl in pain and enrage Torinobu and Bowmont, who, hearing the dog's pained yelps, readies his pistol and prepares to join the fight. Bowmont runs out of the sheriff's office and opens fire. Gunning down one of the corrupted bandits. Torinobu, enraged by their attack on his four-legged companion, momentarily forgets the growing flames in the buildings around him and charges forward, seeking revenge for the dog. His swords burn orange, reflecting the fires all around them as they swing with expert precision. Slicing both of the corrupted bandits in half and leaving them as ragged wet lumps on the floor. Swampy proves himself to be a most loyal, but perhaps not the most intelligent of beasts, as it rushes forwards, howling and yapping at the Crimson Hand cultists. The dog leaps and clamps its jaws onto the shoulder of one of the cultists, who howls in pain before Swampy lets go and prepares to bite again. The other cultists ignore the dog, levelling their rifles and opening fire on both Beaumont and Torinobu. Beaumont throws himself forward, avoiding all of the shots, while Torinobu is grazed down the thigh by a single bullet, but is left mostly unharmed. Meanwhile, the bleeding cultist, angered at the dog biting him, spins his rifle around and uses it as a club, smacking Swampy hard in the flank. The dog yowls in pain and bares its teeth at the wicked cultist. Seeing Bowmont and Torinobu approach and their dog getting ever closer, the heretic preacher summons swirling magical lights, and within the church, a portal rips open momentarily, long enough for 3 hellfire succubi to spill out. The lithe demonic seductresses laugh with delight at the thought of the torture and torment to come. The heretic preacher sends them forth with the order to kill. Out in the street, Bowmont breaks off from the fight, trusting Torinobu to take care of these cultists. Bowmont heads into the saloon and begins trying to extinguish the rapidly spreading flames. Inside is a large group of townsfolk trapped by the fire. "Oh, thank God, it's you," says a familiar-looking ranch hand, peeking over the edge of the bar. "Everyone, this is the man who saved me out in the Copper Hill Canyons. He'll save us now. Don't worry, everything will be okay." "Well, they might be if I can get these bloody flames out," says Bowmont, struggling to suppress the fire. The terrified townsfolk, however, do seem relieved at his presence. Torinobu sees the dire straits of the saloon and decides it is better to go and help Bowmont than continue the fight. He whistles to Swampy. "Swampy-san, Bushido!" Torinobu rushes into the burning saloon and begins helping Bowmont put out the flames. The hellfire succubi, quick and agile, leave the church and charge forward. One of them grabs at Swampy and leaves a claw mark down the dog's side. The hound has had enough and turns, fleeing into the nearby doc's office, whimpering in pain as it hides under the surgery table. Torinobu sees the flames are going to be too hard to put out, and so instead grapples with some of the survivors and forces them out the door.
"Get to safety and run. Don't be foolish. This is no place to hide."
The townsfolk flee down the street as the Crimson Hand cultists begin to take up position around the saloon, planning to kill any who emerge. Luckily for the fleeing townsfolk, they are distracted by Bowmont, who they can see through one of the windows. They open fire at the gambler as he struggles with the flames. A bullet sinks into Beaumont's shoulder. "Ah! Bloody buggers," he says in pain. One of the cultists, the one injured by Swampy, does not care for catching Beaumont or Torinobu. He has a personal vendetta against the dog and pursues it into the doc's office. He begins angrily kicking over equipment and furniture in his search for the cowering dog. "I'm gonna get you, you dirty little mutt," he snarls. The man in black's wicked laughter echoes through the town as the flames in the general store grow too hot and the building collapses into timber and charcoal. "Bloody hell, that's the general store gone, along with anybody inside it," Beaumont says, seeing the lithe forms of the hellfire succubi run towards the saloon. The demons begin slashing at him from the doorway, and he manages to avoid the worst of their cuts, and continues trying to beat out the flames. Torinobu does much the same, ignoring the demon attack for now, seeing it as more important to save these townsfolk. Between them, they manage to extinguish the fires.
"We will take care of these monsters. You good people get to safety. Escape this place,"
he says. "Come on, everyone. We can escape out the back," says the young ranch hand, pointing to the back exit of the saloon that leads into the gambling hall. As the townsfolk move, so too have some of the hellfire succubi, moving around, planning to get in through that same back door that the townsfolk now head for. Meanwhile, Swampy, cornered by the cultist, charges out from his hiding place and leaps at the wicked, black-clad figure. Before he can react, the dog is on him, and it tears out his throat with a vicious bite. No one is around to hear his last gargled bloody chokes as he dies a pathetic death. The remaining Crimson Hand cultists continue to fire into the burning building. But lucky for Beaumont and Torinobu, the smoke is still heavy in the air and their shots miss. The Hellfire Succubus in the doorway of the saloon makes one more attack, which Torinobu deftly defends. Torinobu's swords swing like lightning through the air and cut the succubus down. It screeches in pain as its body parts and blood flows. The townsfolk flee from the saloon, heading into the gambling hall, the young ranch hand ushering people forwards. Come on, we gotta get out of here." He stops dead in his tracks as they enter the gambling hall, seeing, stood right next to him, one of the Hellfire Succubi, a sinister and seductive smile on her face. She whispers something sweet and deadly before her claws slash out and rake him across the chest. The young man stumbles backwards. Seeing his blood flow, his face turns white with shock. Then, before he can even react, the second succubus is right next to him, whispering quietly in his ear as her talon slits his throat. With his last ounce of strength, he hurls his hat back through the doorway into the saloon. The Stetson hits Torinobu in the back and alerts him to the demons attacking the escaping townsfolk.
"We must save the townspeople,"
he says. "We will. Let's just get rid of these bloody riflemen first," says Bowmont, as he gets a clear shot on the rifleman. His holdout pistol is in his hand in a flash. And puts one of them down for good. Then he opens fire with his 6-shooter and blows the head off of another of the cultists. "You finish off these two, I'll get the townspeople," says Bowmont. "Hey!" Torinobu agrees. He rushes outside of the saloon, and his swords sing in the twilight. One of the black-robed cultists falls asunder under his blade, but the other manages to block using its rifle as a club. But they cannot block all of his strikes, and the last of the Crimson Hand cultists fall under Torinobu's blades. Meanwhile, Swampy charges towards the church, barking and howling, the plucky dog thinking it can take on the power of the man in black. When Swampy reaches the doorway to the church, it bares its teeth and prepares to pounce, but the heretic preacher, Akumanojin, simply smiles a sinister smile at the little dog, and then, with a laugh, he turns and walks away, leaving through the back of the church. Such trifling matters not worth his time. He leaves Sarapin. There will be other towns for him to corrupt, even if they have saved this one. Amidst the confusion of the ranch hand's death, the remaining townsfolk in the gambling hall scream and flee towards the door. The Hellfire demons pay them no mind, their sinister eyes set on Torinobu and Bowmont. The cackling demons charge forward, one sprinting straight through the saloon and going for Torinobu, while the other attacks Bowmont. She rakes a bloody wound down Beaumont's back, who spins to face her. "That wasn't very bloody ladylike of you, was it?" he says, and opens fire with his pistol. The shot strikes the demon, and she screeches in pain, but it is not enough to kill her. Outside, Torinobu and the remaining demon are locked in a swirling melee of swords and claws. In the end, it is Torinobu's cold steel that emerges victorious as he beheads the Hellfire Succubus. Bowmont begins struggling to reload his pistol as the final demon advances on him while he is defenseless. As she raises her claw to strike, he hears the barking of Swampy, and the dog charges through the door and jumps up, sinking its teeth directly into the throat of the demon. She howls in pain, the dog howls in victory, as it finishes off the wounded demon, and her body disappears in a cloud of demonic smoke. "Bloody hell, I think that's the last of them," says Bowmont.
"Yes, the town is now safe, free of Akumanojin's corruption."
"That may be, Torinobu, but that poor bloody ranch hand didn't make it, after we saved him out in the canyons.
It is truly a tragedy for such a young life to be cut so short.
I suppose there's nothing else for us to do, but perhaps we could deliver his body to the rancher. That is, if he made it out of this place alive. Beaumont and Torinobu prepare to take the boy's body to the local ranch. They are met by the surviving townsfolk, who thank them for saving their little town and point them in the direction of the local ranch. Beaumont and Torinobu travel to the homestead of rancher John Hancock. With them, they take the body of the young ranch hand, killed by the demonic minions of the Man in Black in the battle for Sarapin. I'm afraid we didn't even know the young lad's name. It's a bloody tragedy what happened to him it is, says Beaumont. John Hancock looks at the boy's body, an expression of deep sorrow on his face.
His name were Eddie Thompson, and he were a damn fine ranch hand. That's a true tragedy, that is. Thank you for bringing him here. Poor boy didn't have no parents, died of the pox 10 years ago, and I've been raising him ever since. We are sorry for your loss, Hancock-san, but if it is any consolation, then he died a hero, helping people to safety. Well, I guess that's some consolation. Not that it's gonna do him any good now. I thank you boys kindly for this. As a show of gratitude, stop by my blacksmith on the edge of the farm. He's a real wizard with that there darkstone stuff. Being you're the adventuring types, I reckon he could whip you up some mighty powerful weapons that might come in handy in your battles across this county. We sorely need more folks like you.
Well, that's most kind of you, sir. Thank you very much. I believe we'll take you up on that offer, says Bowmont. The two men leave John Hancock to grieve and head to the blacksmith's workshop. The blacksmith agrees to enhance one of Torinobu's swords with a dark stone grip, and when Bowmont hands over a sack full of dark stone shards, he promises to whip up something special for the gambler and tells them to come back tomorrow. Come on, Torinobu. I believe we've earned a good night's rest at the Sarapin Hotel. The next day, they prepare to head back to Hancock's farmstead. But suddenly, there is the sound of hoofbeats and a pair of horses ride into town. In a great rush, John Hancock is on the back of one of them, and the blacksmith rides the other.
He took her. Took my Lucy, that bastard,
says John Hancock, struggling to hold back tears.
He's making a deal with that demon down at Holmes Hill. I just know it.
Slow down, Mr. Hancock. What's going on?
I come here looking for you two boys. I need your help. It's my daughter, Lucy. Last night, some crazy strange man, dressed all in black, came round the farm. He held me at gunpoint and took her. Kidnapped my daughter out of my very own house, he did. Said she belonged to the Shadow King. And I heard talk about this Shadow King. They say he's down in Holmes Hill, some kind of demon. I need you boys. Need you to go there, rescue my daughter, get her back to me. You have been very good to us, Hancock-san. We will do this for you. We will find your daughter and return her to you. I want you to get that bastard. Make him pay.
Well, I suppose we know where we're headed next, don't we, Torinobu?
Yes, saving this man's daughter should be our next priority. My blacksmith here
bring you the equipment I promised. The blacksmith dismounts his horse and hands Torinobu his sword. The hilt glows with dark stone, and the blade seems to pulsate with a soft purple light. He hands Bowmont a bag, and looking inside, the gambler finds a modified 3-barreled shotgun with dark stone runes etched into its stock, and with it are several boxes of dark stone cartridges. Bloody hell, sir, you've outdone yourself with this. It's a masterpiece, says the gambler. Well, I guess there's no time to waste. Let's get these horses turned round, onward to Holmes Hill.